Track is a sport full of different events such as hurdles, relays, and sprints, all of which include Newton's laws in various different ways. But let's hear more from our special guest, Mr. Mayers. What do athletes do in order to get their timing as precise as it needs to be to get an edge over their opponent?
Yeah, there are a number of things that athletes might do to improve what I would call like the neuromuscular pathway to improve reaction time. So, the more you practice hearing the sound of the gun to starting a race or getting out of the blocks, the more you practice it, actually, the better you're going to get at it. You can yeah, so there are like gun simulators. Some people will use like two blocks and slap them together. Just anything to get in that habit of being totally still and then, bam, having to react in a split second.
Okay, thank you. Um, in Newton's third law, every action slash force in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In what way does this law affect the way sprinters run?
Yeah. So I think all runners, um, it's if you think about it, all running is resistance training. Because of that, we're always fighting gravity. A lot of times fighting inclines and stuff like that. Obviously on the track, maybe not so much, but the objective is to be improving how much force you can create, right? So honestly, the best way to improve at running is running. The repetition and the increased number of reps, increasing your distance or mileage or whatever, is going to make you stronger and make you more efficient. But then, of course, there's a bunch of other things that people do to increase the resistance training. Hill running, they have parachutes you can pull behind you. They have sleds that you can add weight to. They even have a sort of a tow belt that you can attach to another person. That can, ideally a person that's faster than you so that you can get the feeling of getting dragged along. That was a little bit dangerous. But yeah, things like that. Any way that we can increase resistance is going to hopefully improve the amount of force that we can put on the ground.
Okay. And in track, what would you say is more valued, speed or acceleration?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and I would say that it just depends on who you ask, probably. It's even tough for me to totally decide right now, but I would probably say that I value acceleration. As a distance coach, a race can often come down to the very last little bit. And it's not often the person who has the best speed, per se, because a lot of distance runners are going to max out around the same type of max speed, but it's usually who can accelerate the fastest and create that separation to win the race. Obviously, in a sprinting event, the 100, a lot of people talk about how good somebody is out of the blocks, which I think is going to be acceleration. A lot of people talk about the second half of the race, which is when they meet top speed. Who can get up to top speed the fastest and carry it through the finish line. So it's tough. For me, I'll stick with acceleration.
Okay. Why do you think? How do you think velocity is applied in track?
Yeah. I think velocity is definitely a relative term in a sense that it's going to tell you, like if you looked at speed over time is velocity, right? It's going to tell you what event you're watching or what event you're training for. Like if somebody's got a skill set, an 11-second 100, is going to look a lot different than a 9.5-minute 2 mile. But both of those velocities at the given race are both pretty special. So I think that that velocity, it's just so relative to the event that's happening in terms of determining how special is that athlete, or how great of a performance was that, or what are the demands of a specific race. If we're talking about training, you've got to be hitting certain types of speeds at certain types of distances to train to be an 11-second runner or to be a 9.5-minute 2 miler. You've got to apply that principle just kind of across the board.
Okay. And how could distance and displacement play a part in track?
Let's see, distance and displacement. Okay, yeah, so this one's coming back to me. So I think of it as in cross country or in track, every race is going to be an agreed upon distance, right?
Yeah.
We agree we are running the 100 meter. We agree we're running the 400. We agree we are running the 3,200 meter, right? The 2 mile. The difference is in cross country or in a distance track race. In cross country, we talk about running the tangents. The tangents would be the shortest line possible, so that you're not adding, extra distance on yourself. I think that applies to when we start thinking about displacement, right? And in a track race, why it's so important to get on the inside of lane 1 and not waste a lot of time in lane 2 or, bumping around in the pack. I've seen some really great races that come down to finishing second or third because a person maybe made some mistakes on positioning or the way that they ran a course or something like that. So, so I think that distance is going to be, in track and field, I would say, is the agreed upon race. But displacement might be the path that somebody, actually traveled when they ran that race. So, in a 2 mile, somebody might actually, great example. An alumni ran the New York City Marathon this past weekend. And when she looked at her watch at the finish, it read 26.8 miles instead of the measured 26.2 that is the marathon, right? So, so the path that you take and taking the shortest route would be ideal, but it doesn't always happen.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Knowing that speed and acceleration is a big part of the sport, how can they give you an advantage over your opponent?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, how speed and acceleration, who you ask in terms of valuing one over the other, it's going to determine kind of probably on the event and the demands of the event. So, a few examples. I think like an athlete that's doing the long jump, they have such a short amount of time to get to speed, to do a jump and carry the jump into the pit. So I think acceleration is key there. I think even in the throwing events, people might overlook acceleration and what speed is and the explosiveness that's required to do what we call create displacement between the hips and the shoulders to create torque and a good throw. And then, like I already mentioned in distance races, speed versus acceleration. If you're making that final move at the very end and trying to create separation, or are you going to go early on and try to carry out the speed aspect of it and kind of get away from people earlier, take the acceleration part of it out. But basically, every single event will be doing something to improve their speed, to improve their acceleration, because it's such a critical part of the sport. So much of every event is reliant on some element of either carrying out a maximum speed or creating some sort of explosive acceleration. Let's see, trying to make sure, how can they give you an edge? Yeah, I think for us, we like to emphasize how important those movements are. Like, why breaking down part of the process is so important. Why is it important to train for that explosive moment in a race? Or why is it important to explain why the displacement between hips and shoulders, and if you're not moving quick with that motion, you're not going to get the distance. Or I don't know if that helps answer the question. So we can break it down into a lot of different little components. Rather than focusing so big picture, but chopping it up into those little parts, so that when it comes game time, it's almost like second nature.
Okay, thank you.
All right.